seeing colleagues that are neurodiverse and actually seeing them and sort of making it really safe for them to be themselves, whatever the circumstances, whether that's somebody who is working through their own neurodiversity, whether that's somebody who is supporting others with it.
We are set up for failure, and I am so inspired and proud of the neurodivergent community when I see some of the most amazing people working and owning their spaces.
Welcome to the Society of the Environment EnvCast, where we feature special guests highlighting an environment top 5 each month. Each month, we welcome 2 environmental professionals to explore what they believe to be the top 5 things to consider within a particular topic. Topics range from climate to leadership, agriculture to AI, and everything in between. Look out for some curveballs in the top 5 each month, and remember, we can't cover every important thing within a topic. Our aim is to uncover how you can be part of the solution, to learn from the experts, and to sometimes think outside of the box as we strive for a sustainable future. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome back to EnvCast for another Environment Top 5, this time looking into the topic of neurodiversity. As is quite often the case, we are joined by 2 Chartered Environmentalists to discuss the top 5 things you should know about the topic of neurodiversity and the environment. Mm-hmm. But first, I'm Phil from the Society of the Environment and your podcast host for today. Our guest biographies are in the podcast description as normal, but as an extremely short introduction, I'm very pleased to be joined by Gill Mulroe, Environment and Sustainability Manager at Anchor. Gill is registered as a Chartered Environmentalist via membership of the Chartered Institution of Waste Management, or CRWM for short, where Gill is also a fellow. I'm also joined by environmental podcast royalty, Niki Roach, Director of Blue and Green Consulting and host of the award-winning Planet Possible podcast, a Chartered Environmentalist via membership of the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management, or CIWM, as they're currently known, commonly known, still known as. I mean, talk about keeping me on my toes. Last week, we had the chair of CEnv and a licensed member CEO. This week, we have podcast royalty alongside a Chartered Environmentalist who constantly inspires me with stories about her career. It's great, but it's slightly nerve-wracking for me. But with the nattering that's already happened before we hit record, I think I'm in a safe space, so that's good. But less babble, let's get straight into it. So, number 1, starting with how neurodivergent skills align with sustainability. And I'm handing over to Gill to talk about what we should be considering. But first, can you give us a little bit of a few seconds of who you are and what you do? Bit of context.
Thanks, Phil. I've been waiting so long to join your podcast. As you know, I think I might have been bordering on stalking you to get on this prestige podcast. So I'm thrilled to be here, actually, and with Niki as well. Thank you for the lovely introduction. So I'm Gill Mulroe. I'm a Chartered Environmentalist, a Chartered Waste Manager and a Chartered Manager. And I also have 3 fellows. I've been working in sustainability for a number of years. My early career was in waste management. I now work for Anchor, which is England's largest provider of social housing for elderly people. We have over 60,000 residents and spread over 57,000 properties. So the job is quite huge, and I lead our environment and sustainability team here to deliver our net zero and decarbonisation of our scope 1, 2s and 3s as well. I left school when I stopped going to school actually when I was 14. I was undiagnosed as being neurodivergent at that point. And back then I was classed as a naughty child, and I was punished as well at school for constantly failing spelling tests, maths, etc., etc. And about 25 years or so ago, I had a humble career as a cleaning lady because I didn't really aspire to much. And in the last 25 years, I've gone on to gain 3 charterships, 3 fellowships. I spoke at the United Nations a year and a half ago as well to global leaders. And it's been quite an extraordinary 25 years of development and progression when I understood more about my neurodivergence, my skills and my challenges. So sustainability for me, I think it rewards neurodivergent minds because of the complexity of sustainability. And I've really thrived in this because it is complex and we need complex minds to help solve that through the systems thinking, gap recognition, pattern recognition, complex data and the architecture of that data, being able to focus on really deep dive into some niche topics and be able to look at long-term risk as well. We are very good at sort of horizon mapping and managing risks. So we can default and what I call for me spinning lots of plates at one time. I'm absolutely in my element there. And we're very good at looking at the whole systems thinking as well. So for me, sustainability is such a fantastic opportunity to bring in more neurodivergent minds and neurodivergent thinking, because we are pretty good at looking at those complex problem solving.
There's so many different angles to approach sustainability, and it's so broad, right? So having different minds and different ways of thinking and different ways of connecting those dots, I suppose, must be useful for a team, an organization, just a general goal of what that team is aiming for. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. We can just, my brain, I would say, is like having 10 tabs open on a different screen. And they're all operating at once. I've got one for supplier decarbonisation. I've got another one for how we're going to reduce our energy. There's another one about communication and comms and taking people on the journey. And then there's another one that's building a spreadsheet to calculate our carbon data. And then there's another one looking at how we are going to forecast what our carbon data reduction is going to look like for the next sort of 50 years. And they're all going in my mind at one time.
Well, I can imagine how useful that could be. So how did you make that step? Talk about you personally, if that's okay. How did you go from, you say, humble
Waste.
cleaning person, that kind of thing? You got into waste. At what point did you see your different skills come up? When did you realize that's extremely useful for this sector and it's something that you can build on and you can use as your skill set to make a difference?
That's such a brilliant question and a very complex question to ask, actually, for a complex mind. And I'm sure there is a simpler answer. I started being more involved in sustainability naturally in the waste sector around resource efficiency and reducing waste. So that sort of whet my appetite, so to speak, about the planet and the impact we were making in the planet. And I'd started doing some work in sustainability, and it was FISEP back then. And I did an exam with them years ago to become an FISEP professional, and I failed it. Well, I didn't fail it. I missed the mark by about 2 points. So it kind of motivated me. I like some good motivation as well, Phil. So they, the spreadsheet was telling me I can't. So of course I was going to go, well, I'm going to show you, So, but yeah, it's apologies if that's not answering the question. There's just no easy answer to this of how I stepped into sustainability other than natural curiosity. And again, that is a neurodivergent mind. We are very curious when we see the gaps and why are we not filling those gaps or plugging those gaps. What we're saying and what we're doing, we see the distance between those. And I think, again, that natural curiosity.
I like a bit of natural curiosity. That's probably why I might be a podcast host. I don't know. Maybe we'll get onto that with Niki as well. So Thank you very much for those insights, Gill. It's so fascinating when I hear about your journey over the last, you said 25 years, and I've seen what you post on LinkedIn and so on. Please follow Gill, if that's okay, Gill, on LinkedIn, and see what Gill posts about what she's done over the last few years or couple of decades. The different, and Gill is just one of the examples of the different routes into the environmental profession and the different skill sets that come into the environmental profession and are vastly needed to make a difference to our collective goals, I suppose. So give Gill a follow. You won't regret it. Right. Number 2, I'm going to hand over to Niki to give us some of her own personal reflections in the world of neurodiversity. But first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself for a bit of context?
I don't quite know how I'm going to follow that, Gill. That's a very impressive introduction. Here's the short version. I've kind of always worked in and around the water and environment sector, particularly water. I was president of CIWM in 2020, which was an absolute joy, a real honour. And interestingly, Gill, you're already making me think, because my presidential theme was everything is connected. And I feel like, whilst this is not therapy, Phil, we need to remember that. I must remember this is not therapy, Niki. Like, maybe that's explaining why, because that's how I see the world, through systems and connections. As you very kindly said earlier on, I'm a podcast host. I host Planet Possible. Hence the picture behind me, if you're watching the clip. And I'm also a climate commissioner, Yorkshire and Humber climate commissioner, which I'm very proud of, and something I know Gill's also done, which is lovely. So, for me, I'm really interested in the translation between sectors and how we solve problems by connecting the dots, I think, really, both in terms of people and then data and information and systems. But principally people, actually. I feel like if you can connect people and skills, then we can solve a lot of the big problems. So that's me in a nutshell, I guess, really.
Okay. And one thing that sprung to mind, just as you're saying that, in terms of joining the dots and different ways of thinking and communicating, I'm going to bring myself into this. Why not? From a marketing perspective, to communicate these complex things that we're always talking about in our day jobs to different audiences, to join those dots, whether it's the public or across different sectors or through government or whatever it might be, or at the United Nations, Gill. I guess there's different ways of thinking about it, and the different methods of joining those dots are quite useful for the communication side and getting more people on board, right? And I suppose, podcasts hopefully help that for a start. And me and Niki were talking about before we recorded about how do we know who we're reaching on podcasts and stuff like that. And does it really matter? Because do we want to be talking to the same people all the time? Or do we not? Obviously, we love loyal listeners. Please do keep listening. But we do like to reach more people, right? Different people.
Yeah, I think that's really key. I think it's lovely to have listeners who listen to every episode, work in the spaces that we work in, and hopefully hear the stuff that they're working on kind of amplified. That's a real joy. I love doing that with the pod. But also, there's something really special, I think, and I would imagine you feel the same, for when you put an episode out and it resonates with individuals. People might even occasionally tell you that you weren't expecting, or that somebody listens and they learn something. My mum and dad listen to Planet Possible, and I always think about them when I'm recording, because for the entirety of my career, they've probably never had a clue what I do. Like, it's been an enigma. I work in the water sector. I don't really know what that means. Nobody knows what that means. So actually, it's kind of lifting the lid. And so my job, and I imagine you feel similarly, is to be able to tell stories or help other people tell their stories. That's really what this is about, isn't it? But do it in a way that means that you can drop into the detail if you want to. You can get really geeky, and we definitely do that. But you start at a point where anyone that's broadly interested will kind of get something out of listening. And I think for me, that's one of the real joys with podcasting, is that you can hopefully catch people sometimes that aren't expecting to be interested in this kind of stuff, but with the right guest, with the right story, with the right angle and the right format, sometimes we can make magic happen. And then I often, I don't know if you do the same, but I'll often send episodes of the pod that I think are relevant to people when I meet them. Oh, I spoke to somebody great. I think you'd really like this. You might not listen to every episode of Planet Possible, but this particular topic, like we've put one out today, in fact, that I didn't mean to plug, forgive me, but about faith and culture and the environment. And that's quite different to the sort of stuff we normally do. But the conversation we had was extraordinary about how faith and culture, and faith groups in particular, many of their values align across many faiths actually around the environment and nature. And so how do you find new audiences to connect with? So that for me is an example of a kind of topic that you don't have to be an environmental professional to be interested in that at all. And hopefully that'll reach a wider audience. So yeah, podcasting is not for everybody, is it? But hopefully for a section of society that likes to consume like I do while I'm doing something else. I don't have to sit and concentrate. I can be, going for a run or whatever it might be, gardening and listening to a pod. Yeah. Nicely, I think.
So much of that is relatable to how I think about podcasts and that kind of thing. Something that's not related, I suppose, is that my parents don't know what a podcast is. So that's a challenge in itself. But my in-laws always ask me, "What do you do? Like, what is it? What do you actually do?" Just lots of things. Talk to excellent people about all sorts of different things, and try to champion environmental professionalism. And they go, "So what?" But that's fine. There's different ways of communicating, as you know. So where does the world of neurodiversity and so on fit into your experiences so far in your career?
I mean, I would say that I live in a neurospicy household. That's probably the best
Spicy.
way. Okay. Yeah, neurospicy, definitely. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Some of it labelled, some of it not labelled. But if I talk about me, because that probably feels more comfortable than sort of talking about my family. I've had generalised anxiety disorder for as long as I can remember, diagnosed at about 12. But I mean, it's probably always been there, I think. And that has been like a real challenge, to be honest. I don't mean to sound over dramatic. Lots of people have challenges, but for me, that has been a kind of constant thread. I would say in the last 2 years, probably, I've felt the best I've probably ever felt about it, and it's the most managed. But right through, school, I could kind of think of almost any life stage, and I could tell you how my experience was impacted by feeling chronically anxious at times, and kind of having a second. When I was thinking about how I would explain this, it's been really interesting preparing for this conversation. For me, it's like saying there's always been a sort of second narrative going on in my head. So whatever if I'm in a meeting at work, I'll be trying to concentrate on the meeting, but at the same time, that anxious narrative is always trying to keep me safe. So for me, it's often about health and about do I feel unwell, or do I feel sort of socially quite anxious as well. Those are the two things that trouble me. So if I don't feel great, or if I'm feeling like I'm very visible, if I need to present something, or if I need to, if I've got I guess an environment where I can't get out easily, that might be attending a conference, or it might be standing in a supermarket queue. It doesn't sort of matter where. Then there's that constant sort of second narrative of I'm doing the thing I'm doing, but I've also got to concentrate on keeping myself safe. And so for me, that's been a thread throughout the whole of my career. And so I guess I mean, if it's interesting to you and Gill and listeners, I was kind of trying to think about what are some of my big takeaways as to why I now feel a bit better, I suppose, than I did before. Really, it's not gone. And I chaired a conference the other day, and I was chatting to somebody afterwards. Just somebody come up to have a bit of a natter and said something complimentary, which was very lovely. And I very quickly said, I have anxiety, right? And it's still there. So it might look like I'm super confident because I'm presenting a conference. Actually, my anxiety has sort of turned a bit into my superpower, which is that you would describe me as quite an enthusiastic chair of a conference, right? That's what you would see, quite high energy throughout the day. And that's because I am entirely fueled by adrenaline, right? So my anxiety is the thing that means that at 4 o'clock, I am still like, let's go, let's keep the energy up, let's bring people in, let's connect the dots. If you talk to me about 5:30 when I'm on the train on the way home, I'm like a crumpled mess because I'm completely spent. But I now know that my anxiety channeled well means that I can perform in that environment. And the fact that I like connecting the dots means that actually I naturally enjoy chairing things because I hold in my head this kind of, how do I link these things together? What are the themes? How do I help other people? How do I enable other people to focus on what they need to focus on? Because they can trust that my job is not to be in all of the detail, but is to pull out the key things for them and help them move the whole thing forward. So kind of part of my reflections are not running away from the thing that I think I always used to be worried about, and like leaning into it a little bit and thinking, okay, well, some of this actually enables me to do a better job than if I was trying to mask it all the time and be somebody that I wasn't. And Gill, I'm conscious Phil has a format and that we should be talking, but you nodded then and made a noise. I get, sounds like maybe you recognise that a little bit too, and sort of, yeah. So there's definitely something about being a bit more honest about it. And I think it's great that we're having this conversation. Probably when my career started 25 years ago, I was really ashamed. I didn't think anybody else felt like I did. I couldn't imagine that anybody else felt as bananas as I felt, basically. And so I kept it really hidden. And so one of the things that's really helped is finding trusted colleagues to talk to. And I've done that increasingly over the years, and now quite often, because I'm a contractor, so I'm regularly going to new organisations, working with new teams. Relatively early on, I might say, if I'm feeling anxious, I might just say, oh, by the way, I have a bit of social anxiety. If you see the following behaviours from me, that's all that kind of is. I just sort of wanted you to know that. And they might then say, often they very kindly do say, what can I do to help? And I might tell them what I might need. Yeah. And then it's gone away and the problem's gone. So there's something about like leaning into it and not running away from it. There's something about being really honest about it if you can. And actually the nice thing about anxiety is that the less you try and fight it, the smaller it becomes. So what I've learned is there's something about just allowing it to be there, acknowledging it, but not trying to beat it. And then it sort of gets smaller, which is great. And then the final thing, apart from getting help, I've had all sorts of therapies, which have been really helpful, and I would always encourage people to do that. For me, what worked was a thing called EMDR, which is really interesting. So like tapping therapy is brilliant. Loved it. They use it for like post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that changed my world, actually. But the final thing I would say that really helped me is about taking ownership of your career. So I'm self-employed intentionally, right? That's not an accident that I'm self-employed. I do that because it works for me. It helps me manage my mental health. It means if I'm not able to work full time, I don't have to work full time because I might need a bit of just, respite. For me, that's ice skating. So like if I need time to go ice skating, that's what I took up 2 years ago, year and a half ago, then I can do that. So like finding a way, and for me, bringing it back to professional institutions, that might feel like a bit of a weird segue, but actually the joy for me of professional institutions, CIWM for me, CEnv, CWM. I never know how to pronounce the waste one. Forgive me, Gill. But whatever that might be, it's an institution that is not about the job that you're doing. It's about you as an individual, and it's a place where you can grow your skills, you can find a community. If you move roles, that's a constant, and it gives you a space to own your career and feel in control, and actually feeling in control of my own career, or at least feeling like I have choices, I guess is probably the single biggest thing that's helped my mental health, really, because I've not felt like I've needed to be stuck somewhere. If it's not worked, I can just choose to be somewhere else. Here endeth, Phil.
Well, in terms of two opening topics of the top five and the introduction to the overall topic of neurodiversity that we're talking about and your personal perspectives, for a start, thank you very much, both of you, for sharing your journeys and where you're at now, and the fact that your neurodivergent challenges, whatever that might be, or opportunities, however you want to shape them, they haven't stopped you. Yes, they are challenges on occasions, because you do need to have different methods of utilizing them or coping with them or whatever it might be. There's different ways. But being able to share that on the podcast is fantastic. So thank you very much for that. And so much of it I relate to. The whole idea, Niki, with kind of reshaping or not battling against the anxiety. And I'm so pleased you mentioned the fact that nobody would know as a chair on a stage or whatever it might be, but it's still there, and people should probably be aware of that sometimes. Do they need to be aware of it? I don't know. Maybe they do, but it can help people if somebody else is going through it and know that you suffer from a similar thing or have challenges around that. Because I do. I've had anxiety issues for a very long time, diagnosed with depression, that kind of thing. But you don't always see that, and it isn't always an issue. But sometimes it is, and sometimes you have to work through it. So from a personal perspective, thank you for sharing. very, very useful to hear. And don't let it hold you back was something that I heard, and you can use it to help you. And as Gill mentioned quite rightly, it's a superpower in some instances to join those dots and make things happen that other people might not be able to do and might not be able to see. So it's really good to hear. And I've also been supported by colleagues through CEnv. So a big shout out for CEnv colleagues for helping move through those kind of things. Anyway, right. Number 3 of our top 5 today, diving into how professional accreditations and memberships provide neurodivergent professionals with a competitive edge. And I've probably touched on it already, but also mentioning about without a degree and that kind of thing. So back to Gill on this one.
Thank you, Phil and Niki. That were amazing, actually. I hope you don't mind me just stepping back for a second, Phil, because there were a few things Niki said that were quite huge here about, being honest with yourself and shame, because shame is such a huge, important factor, and it's a burden we carry. And that burden has been placed on us by society because of that judgment and assessment straight away. When we do a few things wrong, we are very critical as human beings. So, that is 2 really important points that Niki has raised over and above all these, and being honest with yourself and the shame as well are things that can actually stop you from progressing and moving forward, because you do become into yourself, as I call it, a black hole, and you don't know how to get out of it if you don't have the support mechanisms around you. And coping mechanisms as well are really important. And Niki mentioned quite a few there with ice skating, which is super impressive. I'm going to change her name to Jane Torval. I think we need to see a twirl. And for me, it's open water. I go cold water swimming, just not in the winter, only in summer. But sorry to digress there a little second. It's just that there were a few things that Niki had raised there that were really, really important. And honesty is something I didn't know about. And this goes back to CIWM, actually, to link back to your question. I didn't know. I don't have a degree. I never had the opportunity to have a degree. Of course, I wouldn't. I have no qualifications from school, so degree wasn't going to be a route for me anyway. And most of the teachers, I had one teacher actually wrote in my report card that I was thick as 2 short planks. So, and someone said I was going to be, I'm never going to be anything anyway. So my early years were of, you are this kind of big. And so working in the waste sector, CIWM had come up, and somebody had mentioned about doing chartership. Of course, the first thing I thought about was, you have to have a degree, you have to be this kind of person. I don't see myself as someone who would be have the acumen or to be a chartered manager. And way back then, if you didn't have a degree, you had to do it through a longer route as well. I think my application about 10,000 words, because I had to do it through a they don't have it now. I can't remember the terminology for it from way back then, but experienced practitioner route, I think it was called. And that in itself, I think I had 2 total breakdowns during that. I can't do it. This is too much for me. It's too big for me. It was so difficult to do, but I did do it, and I went and had my interview. I keep saying back then when we did interviews face to face. Do you remember those? And I had the most wonderful interviewers as well. And I took something totally different to them as part of my professional interview. So they said yes. You can imagine how tall I felt when I got that email to say, you're a chartered waste manager. It was like acceptance, peer recognised. a belonging. It felt, that much to me. And it were amazing. And what that led me on to then was I joined the Centre Council for CIWM in the North East region. So I was able to start networking and building more CPD and developments and seek development opportunities. Like Niki, back then I was still hiding. And it were a lovely colleague who was also a centre councillor. And I'm going to give him a little plug because I often talk about Gareth Morton from Eco Surety. And Gareth helped change my life because he saw I was neurodivergent long before, he'd just seen some behaviours and I wasn't having a particularly great time. And Gareth said, why don't you tell people that might help you? And I was terrified because I thought, if I tell people I'm going to lose my job, it was this big fear again that I'm dyslexic and ADHD, that was something society, again, back to those early years, had decided, wasn't someone who was welcome, let alone welcome in a professional world. So Gareth really did support me. I'll be ever grateful to Gareth for the rest of my life for what he helped me with, and that sort of coming out, as I call it, about my neurodivergence. It were a big thing. It was fear-filled. It was so difficult. But what Gareth helped me do was understand me more and be able to, like Niki says, be honest with myself. And once I started being honest with myself and others, things started changing, and for me, and building in how I could develop and how my mind is capable of developing. Because being neurodivergent, there is a big myth that it's a capability issue, and it isn't. You need to be in the right space with the right people, and you can thrive. And if you're not, then you're not going to thrive. You're going to have the opposite. But through CIWM, I then developed into my Chartered Environmentalist. It did take me 3 times to do that one, Phil, because it was super difficult doing a Chartered Environmentalist as a waste manager, because you really do need to drill into how you can show those wider sustainability and environmental levers while being in a waste environment. So it's not very straightforward, and that took me quite a number of years to actually do, and that continuous professional development. What that helped me again through professional membership is, again, look broader. What gaps do I have? What do I need to plug? I know where I want to be. And at that point, I knew I wanted to go into sustainability. It took me several years to do it as well, because I'm not going through a linear route. It's a bit like, I live in Yorkshire, and I'd say it's a bit like going from Yorkshire to Manchester, but via Glasgow. Yeah, and it kind of looks something like that, a bit of a diversion. But through those sort of professional memberships, it helped me sort of create some credibility, better skills, give me access to some amazing professionals and mentors, and where I couldn't have had that, go to university, be a graduate, go into a graduate program, go into sustainability early in my career. It's been a round and about way. But what I have done through professional memberships is pick up lots more skills, lots more different types of knowledge, and be able to develop through their programs and continuous professional development to get to the United Nations, and without that early steer into CIWM, then on to SOC EnV through my Chartered Environmentalist, I certainly wouldn't be sat here today. So it's been rewarding. I would absolutely recommend people look at memberships, whether they have a plan to be chartership. You can be a member. I was a member of CIWM a long time before I did my chartership, and just hoovered up all that opportunity, all those webinars, all those events, walking up to people and saying hello. Again, when we used to do more our meetings were face to face, weren't they, pre-COVID? So yeah, there's huge opportunity within professional memberships that I don't feel people know, and a lot of employers, if they don't already know this, may well pay for a professional membership as well, because they also want to see their teams develop.
Yep. And a lot of them don't just pay for it, they give you a little bit of extra as well, which is always nice for the consultants and so on. If you wanted an extra bit of motivation to become chartered or official members of an institute. There's so much to unpick there, so thank you very much for sharing. One of the key takeaways is the not needing degrees, master's degrees, that kind of thing. Hopefully the process is different these days. We at CEnv, we've put in a lot of flexibilities in terms of accessibility, that kind of thing. So you don't need to write huge amounts, that kind of thing, because we know not everybody is okay with doing that. So if you can present your experiences in a different way, then we are more than happy to do that, which is has traditionally been a barrier, as you've quite rightly outlined.
Just to add, Phil, as well, for reassurance, I did some work a couple of months ago with IEMA and their assessors, and it was absolutely brilliant to help them. Not everybody is as comfortable as myself and Niki to be able to be honest, and I accept that. It is scary. I understand that. Going back to those days, I mean, my palms are sweating just thinking about it when I started telling people in the fear. But I did a session with the professional assessors who are doing the chartership assessors, onboarding people, their professional accreditations, around what behaviours they may see in front of them, but what's actually happening in my mind, to give them an understanding around what they may be seeing, but what's actually happening in here, because we do need to get data, put it through what our class is a machine in our head to make it sound in a way that a neurotypical person wants to hear. That in itself is cognitively overloading and challenging. So in a setting such as a professional membership, that means so much to people. To even be in the room to get that far, we can assimilate different behaviours. I think Niki mentioned when she does a presentation, she'll say what you might see from me today. But to help people, we've done some work with assessors, so to make those situations more comfortable.
Well, keep on going with that and spreading the word about all of that. Obviously, people are learning all the time, and hopefully, we're in a different space these days than we were 20 years ago or so. But everyone's always learning, so keep spreading the word around all those elements. And the whole thing about becoming chartered without having degrees, without having master's degrees, is so important, I think. And so many employers ask for chartership these days. You don't have to have a degree to do that. It's just, if you're not academically minded or whatever that might look like, as Gill's quite rightly outlined, you can join a professional body. Don't have to be straight at chartered level or anything like that, but you have the network there available to you. You have the CPD opportunities available to you, and you can progress at your own pace. Obviously, you might have pressures from employers or whatever it might be, but there are opportunities there for you to grab hold of, and you might be able to find something that really resonates with how you work and how your brain works. So I think professional bodies are really useful for that. I'm wary of time, so going to head on to topic number 4, if that's okay. Which we're handing it back over to Niki. Something to do with parents and carers in the workplace. So I'm handing over to Niki to tell us more about that.
Thanks, Phil. I guess when I was thinking about what might be useful, like some of this is my experience, some of this is also, I have some wonderful friends who are amazing parents to children with a whole range of additional needs, including neurodiversity. And so I just thought, so apologies if it's obvious, really, but I said to them, what would you want to hear? What do you think would be useful advice? If nothing else, for maybe employers listening, or for people who have colleagues who are parents or carers of children who are neurodiverse. And because, I mean, anyone who is working with people who are carers of anybody or who are parents recognises that a flexible workplace is really helpful. And so sometimes these things will apply regardless of what, but I think there's some stuff that's a bit more specific to children with neurodiversity. So I guess the first thing is thinking about flexibility and where you can baking flexibility into roles. And that might look different, or that will look different depending on the individual. It could be by the time you've got your child to school, you feel like you've done a day's work. Sometimes just getting neurodiverse children into a school environment is really difficult, and it might be fine on Monday and then it might not be happening at all on a Tuesday. And so by the time you kind of turn your laptop on, or wherever that might be, or walk into the office, you might be pretty spent, and then you've got to kind of find your energy and start the day. So actually, where possible, creating flexibility. I'm talking to a lovely friend who said her colleagues know that if she sits in a particular desk, she just needs 10 minutes and they'll give her some space. And that's like the sort of signal, which is, okay, she's over there. We will step back or bring her a cup of tea and leave her in peace, whatever it needs to be, right? But just give them some time to reset, which I thought was wonderful. It's like really gentle and subtle. Nobody needs to say anything, but her team sound amazing in that they know this is what that individual needs in order to be able to perform her best, because she wants to, just like pretty much everybody does when they come to work. So there's something about creating a flexible environment, creating the conditions that enable people to perform, really. So, as we've just talked about, knowing what people's triggers are. I think we've talked a little bit about like video conferencing today, haven't we? I was with a team yesterday on site. Oh, I loved it. Like, there's something you cannot beat about being in a room with people. It's not for everyone, but my brain loves it. And just those chats in the car on the way to the train station, or over a cup of tea at break time, getting to know the individuals that you work with, and taking the time to care and to learn about them. And particularly, I think, if you're dealing with or working alongside parents or carers who've got children who are not neurotypical, just understanding what that looks like for that family, because you've met one child with neurodiversity and you've met one child with neurodiversity. Like, it definitely presents very differently in my experience. And some things that you would expect to be difficult are a walk in the park. Certainly as a parent, I find that often things that I expect to be tricky, I'm like, oh, and then other things that I thought we would, because it was fine last week, are suddenly not fine. And so spending the time getting to really know your colleagues and peers and understand how you can help them. And sort of checking in. And then the final thing, and if it's not too cheeky, Phil, I might just ask to pop in the show notes. There's just a few resources. I talked to a few friends and colleagues that work in and around this space, and sort of said, where would you signpost people? And there's some amazing signposting, including one that has recently become apparent to me, which is around financial planning for parents and carers of neurodiverse children, because actually there's definitely a movement towards financial planners becoming more aware of the need to do things differently. I think there's a lesson there for employers as well, as to how do you, particularly children who've got a range of additional needs, not just neurodiversity, but a range of additional needs, recognising that those parents will need to financially plan differently. They will need different arrangements for those children potentially. So there's some great resources that I won't talk about now in detail, but if it's all right with you, we could sort of signpost for listeners that might be interested.
Absolutely. We like a bit of signposting. We don't know everything ourselves, it's fair to say. So there are networks and organisations out there who are there to expertly support those who need it. So absolutely fine for me. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And I think that will help a lot of parents out there working in the environmental space, or not. Just make their lives a little bit easier, more simplified, more whatever it might be, in order for them to perform their best at work. Makes a lot of sense to me. Right. So, number 5, the final item to cover in this episode, is the kind of the outlining the key takeaways for the listeners. And I think we've had quite a few key takeaways already, but we'll go into it anyway. What do you want them to know and consider after this podcast? And I think we're going to possibly go for one or two each on this particular occasion. So I'm going to stick with Niki for now to give us your first key takeaway.
Well, I think I've been reflecting on the conversation. So for me, these aren't things I've prepped in advance. This has been what have I heard from your reflections, Phil, and from Gill, which has been so insightful. So thank you. I've genuinely loved the conversation. I think probably two things. One is around shame and what we just talked about, in terms of supporting parents, seeing carers, seeing colleagues that are neurodiverse and actually seeing them and sort of making it really safe for them to be themselves, whatever the circumstances, whether that's somebody who is working through their own neurodiversity, whether that's somebody who is supporting others with it, right? So there's something about just removing the shame from these conversations and celebrating the positives, recognizing the superpowers that exist in there, but not dressing that up as like, everything's a superpower. Let's not pretend sometimes this stuff is really hard. It makes life really additionally difficult. The world is not designed for anything beyond neurotypical lives at the moment, unfortunately. So it is tiring. And so it's about, I think, acknowledging that, removing the shame from it and creating as much as you can, a kind of comfortable landing pad for people who are sort of affected by this, really affected in the best possible way. And then the other thing for me, I think, is about finding your tribe. So we talked about the importance of joining the dots, finding community. And I think CIWM has been a constant. I joined, I think, a year into my career in the early 2000s. I've been a member for knocking on a quarter of a century, if not longer. Lots of other stuff in life has changed, lots of other stuff. But that has been pretty constant, actually, my membership. And that's about me. That's not about who I work for. That's about me and my skills and the friends and connections I have through CIWM are there for the ups and the downs and are there to help me upskill and to push me and to poke me into doing difficult things sometimes, like, will you come and chair something that feels really scary? And so for me, finding your tribe, like whether that's a professional institution or whatever it is, but for me and certainly for Gill, it sounds like that has been a real lifeboat actually throughout all of this. So it's lovely to get the letters after your name and and the kind of recognition, but actually the community that comes with that, people who have shared values, similar skills, but often different approaches, is, for me, has been the making of my career and has been a huge contributor to why I enjoy what I do so much. So those are my big two takeaways, I think.
Love it. And there's one of the snippets for the promotion, it's fair to say. Thank you very much for sharing that. One thing, so much of that resonates with me, but one thing that I wrote down was it's not always easy. And I don't think we necessarily want to always make it easy, but we want to allow people to thrive, right? No matter who they are, how they think, that kind of thing. It's never going to be easy for anybody, but allowing people to thrive in the right way is what we're trying to do through the networks that you mentioned and through the mindset and not judging people and all that kind of, yeah. Brilliant. Gill, over to you. Key takeaways.
Yeah, this is very difficult too. I mean, I could sit here and give 100, as you know, Phil.
Yeah.
So it's been difficult to think about too. And I think from a human level, being neurodivergent is difficult. It really is difficult, as we live in a world that isn't made for us. And at every opportunity, we are set up for failure. And here we are not failing. And I think it's really important to understand that. And at times when I've not in myself and felt I've failed, I haven't. So I think it's really important to change our mindsets as well and walk tall about who you are. We are set up for failure, and I'm so inspired and proud of the neurodivergent community when I see some of the most amazing people working and owning their spaces. And if you're on your early career, I would, keep going forward and keep knocking on those doors. I've had to knock on a hell of a lot of doors in my career to let me in, and don't ever stop knocking on doors, because someone will open that door, and as Niki said, you will find your tribe, and that's so important to surround yourself with people. I can join a meeting with other neurodivergent professionals. I work with the British Dyslexia Association as well, and I can have conversations, and we'll have 10 different conversations in one, which would make utterly no sense to someone else. But to us, we're on the same wavelength because we're just dipping in and out of different conversations. So yeah, finding your tribe is really important to be able to talk about challenges you've had. I used to think it was just me. They'd be like, "Oh, you do that as well?" No. So again, it's a brilliant. We need that space to be with our tribe. I love that word, Niki. I'm going to keep that. So yeah, that's definitely one big takeaway. In your workplace, they may have some abilities groups, disabilities groups. Have a look for those. If you've got an EDI person, have a look for those. But the other one for me is definitely the professional membership. Again, the door is open. We need sustainability is about diversity. We need our job in sustainability, and I get quite passionate about this, is our job is to look around that table and see who's not sat there, who isn't represented, and collaboration and collective working is being sustainable. It's about fixing issues for the planet for everyone, not just one person. So look at professional memberships. They are there. The door is open for you, and hoover up all those opportunities and, peers and mentors. Mentor. I've gone a long way with mentor. So definitely find yourself a mentor, because if you can't open the door, then, give your mentor a little job to do it for you as well.
Perfect. And there's our second clip for promotion. Excellent stuff. I like it. And if nothing else, I mean, there's so many reasons why we did this topic on the podcast. But we also need inspirational people to talk about it. And you two are certainly two of those. So thank you very much for that. And hopefully it opens up more conversations beyond this podcast and within workplaces and so on, and just in people's minds, because, you do need to start with you sometimes. So, and I don't really want to finish this podcast. I feel like we could cover a lot more here, but the idea is for it to be snappy and to give people an idea of what they think about, and maybe we could do a bit more of a long-winded, a more detailed webinar on particular elements of that or something like that. I'd love to do those things, and I'm working with Gill at the moment with the DSI with FISEP to put together a webinar on neurodiversity. But again, the hour won't cover everything with it. So, but every little helps, hopefully. So thank you very much for that. Little last plug for Planet Possible. It's gone weekly, right? And you've just been to New York with it, and you've won an award in New York with it.
I know. Okay. Yeah. Weekly is a little scary. If there's some anxiety kicking around, it's about that. But yeah, thank you for the plug, Phil, and thanks for the support. Really appreciate it.
That's quite all right. There'll be a link in the description, so go find that. But thank you very much to our CMv guests for today, Niki and Gill. As always, we've covered so much. Please check out any links and resources in the pod description to keep on learning. If you've got an idea of a top 5 topic for us to cover in a future episode, please do drop us a message. Let us know. You can either do that in the comments, message me directly on LinkedIn. You can do it via the contact form on the CEnv website. It's up to you. But thank you very much again. And I'll see you at the next episode next month for another topic to be explored. If you've made it this far, please remember to subscribe wherever you're listening to this episode so you don't miss the next one. Also, rate our podcast and leave a comment to help us reach more people. Thank you very much for listening or watching on YouTube. We look forward to the next episode next month. See you then.